Hello Eurovision friends, thank you so much for coming to my channel Eurovision Histories for another Pro Contra video on one of the favorites of Eurovision 2025. And today we're talking about Louane representing France with her song Maman. And as per usual, I will be listing all the arguments I could find for Louane and France winning Eurovision this year, and then also all the arguments against Louane and France winning Eurovision this year. As per usual, I used your comments from the community tab of my channel. Thank you so much. Some really great ideas in there that made this video much more interesting than it otherwise would have been. So thank you for that. Now let's get right to it. As per usual, I will start with the pro side of things. And one of the main arguments I read in your comments as well, and I hear all around, is that this is a very universal sound, the song is, and it's also a non-threatening song, a non-controversial entry. And when we look at all of the other favorites, for example, Sweden might turn some people off because they think it's a joke entry. Same for Estonia. Maybe Malta and Finland will turn some more conservative viewers off, and maybe Austria will turn people off that don't like operatic vocals, whereas France has a very standard ballad, and that might be a contra-argument as well, and I will bring that up later on again. But it's also the kind of song that a lot of people can love and not a lot of people will hate. And then it is also a possible compromise winner, like Jamala was, like Duncan Lawrence was, maybe not winning the juries, maybe not winning the televote, but in the end getting enough in both votes to win overall. Whereas all of the other entries I just mentioned, Austria might get a huge jury vote, but a very low televote, or Sweden might get an incredible televote and a very low jury vote, same for Finland and Malta maybe. And France could do well in both because it is non-threatening, non-controversial, and then emerge victorious because it is sort of a compromise winner. And then, and this is almost my favorite pro argument, authenticity. I think every time you see Louane perform any song, but especially this song, she seems very approachable, very relatable. It seems like she's just a normal person going on that stage and then has this beautiful voice and is a great artist, obviously. But there's no diva persona. There's nothing artificial about her style of performing. There's no distance between her and the audience, and that just really shines through. And it even shines through if you don't understand the lyrics of the song. However, the message of the song is another big part of the authenticity argument for me. This is a message about her life. She's really telling us about her very intimate feelings about losing her mom, being with in her relationship and having a daughter herself. And this whole message is something that a lot of people can relate to. I think it will really hit home if people do understand what the song is about. Moms will be able to relate, children that have lost parents will be able to relate, young mothers that just had a child can relate, and fathers as well, obviously. So this is something that really makes this entry also stand out in a sea of more choreographed and in some ways sometimes they feel calculated entries. This is really an authentic entry from France and Louane personally as well. And I think a good staging can help drive this message home. Obviously, the song is in French. Not everyone understands French, so you need a very good staging, intimate, that tells the story of the song. Maybe you have some parts of the lyrics in subtitles or on stage in some way to really drive the message home. There are some phrases in the lyrics that stand out to me and will make people understand the message. There are some other phrases in the lyrics that you don't really need to understand. Sometimes they might even seem a bit confusing because it is a sequel to the 2015 song. And like the first phrase, for example, there are no more bats, there are no more lovers. You might be like, what is the song actually about? But if you translate just parts of the lyrics, that might actually help to make the song even more relatable and the message of the song as well. However, they need to find a very good staging for this because it doesn't have the advantage of being in English and being understood by a lot of people. Surprisingly, for a ballad like this, I think it is also quite catchy and quite memorable. There are two hooks in the song. The chorus, Maman, is repeated a lot throughout the song, but it kind of stays in your head. It's not a usual melody that you hear all that much, so it kind of stays with you. And then the pre-chorus, which is actually the part of the song I like the most, Je vais mieux, je sais où je vais, is also quite catchy and is kind of the second hook of the song. And I think people can either stay with the chorus or they can go with the pre-chorus. And so everyone can find something in the song that they like. And I do think people will remember this song, not just because of the emotion, but also because of the catchiness when it comes time to vote, both jury and televoters. And then Louane is obviously very experienced. She has done this for over a decade now. She has performed on very big stages. So the Eurovision stage won't be the first big stage that she ever performs on, as opposed to some other artists we have this year. And she's also an established artist in France, which might help with some jury members that have heard of her, that know that she is quite a big name in France and might thus be convinced to vote for her for that reason. And she is also a successful actress. She has won the César for her role in La Famille Bélier. And I think that can help her really bring the emotion on the night that it actually matters during the jury rehearsal and then also during the grand final. She can really connect to the audience and bring all of the emotion out, because it's also a very personal song to her, of course, but in this very high pressure, high tension moment, being an experienced actress can also help with that, I do believe. And then, and this is actually one of the main arguments you guys used in the comments for this song, juries will love an entry like this. They have in the past. If we think of Slimane, of Voila, of John's Tears, they love a ballad in French with a good voice, which this is. So there's a very high chance that the juries will shower this with votes, and that might help it win in the end. It is also a very well-composed entry. When you look at the instrumentation, it's well-produced, and the juries will also go for something like that. Additionally, it is third in the odds, so there might be a bit of a bandwagon effect, especially with the juries. And the two songs that are above France, Sweden and Austria, both have aspects to them that might not make them big jury favorites. Like the operatic vocals is something that the juries have not gone for in the past of Austria. And the juries have also not really awarded a lot of points to fun entries like Sweden is. So maybe France can be the real bandwagon of the juries, and a lot of jury members will go for that because they want to vote for something that is high up in the odds, because after the contest they don't want to be criticized for voting for entries that no one else liked. And then also being quite high in the odds will help with the producer decided running order. They usually don't put some of the favorites in the odds in very unfavorable running order positions. And so France might get quite a late running order position, which will help a lot, especially because it is a ballad. And then it is kind of stereotypically French in that it is a ballad, it's very emotional. And I have noticed over the years that people like to go for songs that seem stereotypical to that country. They love France to have a ballad. They love Finland to have a rock song. They love, I don't know, some of the Southern European countries to have traditional elements. And so being quite stereotypically French might actually help with that. I think the voice message at the end of the song, which is her daughter saying the word maman, will help make it memorable and will maybe be the emotional climax of the song that will convince a lot of people to like this. You also notice that France really wants to win Eurovision. They have a head of delegation which has been working over the last couple of years on the right trajectory to get established artists, good artists, to perform, to find the right staging, to have a reveal at the rugby stadium that a lot of French people saw, to get really French people interested in Eurovision again. And they just want to win this. They have the resources also to do the PR and everything you need to do to really push this. And this is obviously a very important part of it. If a country has the best song but doesn't really want to win, they might not invest everything they have into winning. And France quite possibly will. And France has also waited for their win for decades now, for their next win for decades now, so that they don't have this disadvantage that some people might think, not Sweden again, Austria won just 10 years ago, let's give it to a country that hasn't won in a long time. I think only fans think like that. The casual viewer doesn't really think like that, but that might be the few votes difference that make the difference in the end. In the final, it might be one of only a few ballads because we have televote only semifinals. So a lot of the ballads might fall to the wayside and might not be in the final. However, I do think that we will have Switzerland, obviously, because it's an automatic qualifier. We also have Italy as an automatic qualifier. I think Greece will make it. So there will be quite a few ballads, but not as many as we had, for example, in 2022. And that can help the ballads stand out even more. And maybe a ballad in French will be like more than a ballad in Greek by a lot of televoters as well, because the sounds are more usual to their ears. They're more used to them. And then televoters might spread out. We have huge televote favorites like Sweden, Finland, Malta, and televote magnets like Ukraine or Israel that can take up a lot of the televotes. And so the jury winner, which might be France, might be the overall winner because of that reason. Then a lot of people across Europe love the French language. It feels romantic and emotional to a lot of people, especially in Northern Europe, I think. And we've seen that jury members go more for ballads in French than ballads in other languages, and that will help Maman stand out as well. Then the staging for France will be surprising, and if they get it right, that can create a lot of momentum during rehearsals. We already know how Sweden will be staged, probably how Finland will be staged, so this will be something that can create momentum and really push France across the finish line as well. And a lot of talk about the staging maybe as well. And then it is a song that can be played on the radio. Austria with the operatic vocals might not be played by radio stations for that reason. Sweden, because it's in Swedish and it's a fun entry that you kind of need the staging with. I don't think so, but a lot of people might think so. But this song is a song that can be played by radios across Europe, and that's one of the criteria that the juries will also be voting on. So that's another pro argument there. And then I also think with hosting the Olympics last year, there's quite a positive image of France at the moment, and that can help a lot of televoters especially be convinced to vote for France as well. And then I think a Big Five win can also be quite beneficial for the contest. I think it will create a lot of interest in France, one of the biggest countries in Europe, and that can help Eurovision survive in the future as well. That's not really an argument for the song, but rather why a French win would be something positive for the contest. Now let's go to the contra side of things, which we also have to talk about. Lots of people have said that this is kind of a generic, boring ballad. It is too standard to impress. There's no standout moment. A lot of people will think, oh, another French ballad, how great, and not vote for it for that reason. And maybe the juries also have other more impressive vocals like Austria or Czechia to go for. That could be a contra argument. Also, that the song depends on the lyrics and the message a lot. If you don't understand what the song is about, it doesn't feel as emotional. You don't get goosebumps as much just listening to the music and her great voice. So if they don't get the staging right and don't have some way of conveying that very emotional message, it might fall completely flat and people might just see it as one other ballad and not vote for it for that reason. Then there are also other songs that are in English with very personal lyrics. For example, Slovenia, if they make it to the final, that might take some of the emotional ballad votes away from France, because it is just more instant, because you understand the lyrics more easily than the lyrics of the French song. And then there is a lot of French this year, kind of a record in modern times. We have the Netherlands singing partly in French. Israel has a part of the lyrics in French. Luxembourg in French. France, obviously, in French. And then you also have Switzerland singing in French. So people that love the French language, I mentioned that in the pro arguments, have a lot more of songs to choose from than they usually had. And that might be a detriment for France. And I think especially the fact that Switzerland sent this very emotional, subdued ballad, which is also in French, also performed by a female singer, also performed by a singer that seems very relatable and very approachable as well, that could really hurt France. Sometimes I think maybe Voila would have won in 2021 if Switzerland had sent Luca Henney instead of John Steers that year, and all the French-loving votes would have concentrated on France. So Switzerland being there could really hurt France's chances, and especially because we already know that Switzerland will perform 19th in the running order. If France draws first half in the final and is performed 9th or 10th, and then you have Switzerland much later on, that might overshadow the French song quite a lot. And then also the juries might be split not only between the French song, Switzerland is a possible jury winner, but there's lots of songs that the juries could go for, like Czechia as well, with great vocals and a pop structure, and it's also in English. Usually the juries go for songs in English. So there's lots of songs that they could potentially vote for, and so the jury votes might be a lot more split than they were in the last 2 years, with Loreen and Nemo getting a huge chunk of the jury votes, and then it might not be big enough of a margin to actually win. And then televoters might just find it boring and go for the more splashy entries, which we have a lot of this year. So there's a lot to choose from for the televoters. And so France might be left with just a few televotes that will not be enough to win as well. The voice message at the end can be a pro, but it might also be a contra. To me personally, for example, it feels a bit much to add that at the end, and it might turn a few people off that would otherwise have voted for the song. And then the vocals and the staging need to be 100% perfect. With a ballad like this, you cannot have an off moment like Slimane unfortunately did in the jury show last year. And you really notice that he got, I think, a lot less jury votes than he would otherwise have gotten. If Sweden or Finland have an off note, it doesn't matter that much because the focus of the performance is on something else. But for a ballad like this, it needs to be perfect. And if Louane has a bad night during the jury final or the grand final, that can really lower its chances of winning. And the staging, again, the message has to be driven home. And if they have a staging that doesn't quite work, that will hurt the song a lot. And France's track record with stagings, looking at Évidemment, for example, is not all that great. And also the reveal during a rugby final in a big stadium was not ideal for a very intimate and emotional ballad. So sometimes France can get it very well and very right, like with Voila and with Slimane, and sometimes they get it quite wrong. And if that happens this year, obviously that will hurt France's chances to win. And then with the world as it is at the moment, people might just go for more fun entries and might not want to lean into this very emotional side of things, which might also hurt it. And then again, there are not too many televotes left in the end. We have the televote magnets, Israel and Ukraine. We have songs that are very televote friendly, like Finland, like Sweden, like Malta and Estonia. And if they take up the first 5-6 places in most countries' televotes, there are just scraps left for France and the other countries to take, and that might not be enough to win, especially if the jury vote and the margin is not big enough. These are all the contra arguments I could find. Thank you again for commenting in the community tab of my channel. I'll do this for other songs as well, so do participate in that, and do subscribe as well if you don't want to miss any of my future videos, and then I might see you in my next one. See you then, and bye bye.